It was built in the 1930s, miles of elevated railroad bed, designed more or less to fly freight trains over the west side of Manhattan. The line ran straight through factories and warehouses, and where the freight was loaded 30 feet above the streets. After the last train rumbled over the tracks in 1980, carrying apparently 3 carloads of frozen turkeys, the place began to go wild. Wild with people who shimmied up the girders looking for a little adventure, both legal and illegal, above the restraints of the city streets, and wild with nature, as seeds took hold in the gravel of the rail bed and sprouted into what was apparently a remarkable ecosystem of grasses, shrubs, wildflowers, and small trees. In the mid-1980s, property owners around and under the High Line decided it was a blight that served no earthly purpose, made no money, and that it must come down. But in 1999, 2 residents of the neighborhood, a guy named Joshua David and another named Robert Hammond, began to push the idea that the structure should be preserved. Not just preserved, but turned into a park, of all things. Actually, it was a pretty obvious idea. After all, the rough prototype was already there, an open space where, for the past 20 years, plants have been growing and people had been gathering. By 2002, a group called the Friends of the High Line had friends on the city council, and the process of turning the place into a park actually began. It opened in early June 2009. Joan and I walked it about a month later. One of the stories we've heard about Highline is that there's a woman who's an opera singer that comes out on her fire escape to sing or to practice, and she's been doing that all through the 80s, 90s, I guess, and the park will provide her now with a real audience. More than anything else, what I felt was this sense of astonished gratitude to the people who put it all together. In a world increasingly roughened by the corrosive agents of greed, maniacal narcissism, and the evaporation of communal memory, here's something done so well, which serves so many purposes that it hardly seems possible it's real. We all know that it won't be this beautiful in 10 or 20 or 50 years. Things change, wear down, drift in purpose, lose funding and focus. But that's the way all stories go until they reach an ending or a new beginning.
Well, I remember just because my parents live right down here, my sister do, so years ago in 1980, back then we used to sneak up here when it was really decrepit and hang out up here, and it was very dangerous because there were places that would go right down to the street. But then later on, a few years later, they really blocked it off with barbed wire and cemented up all our access points. But to see it now, after all these years like this, it's incredible. Well, first thing, it's like a perfect place to do outside studies of architecture. There's all types of architecture, plus there's these wonderful arrangement of plants where you get the organic against the geometry of the architecture. It's isolated. They can get away from the crowds. They're not in the middle of the dirty street or anything. They can focus. It has a bathroom that's close to Parsons, and we can all stick together. It's very easy for me to just walk up and down and talk to them all. They have benches. It's like an ideal place to for an art school.
I'd like to think that the High Line will still be here 200 years from now, and I only wish I could come back and see what it will have become then.